Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but I could watch dog pictures all day long. Um, I'm Amber Kaiser. I'm part of the communications team at the Dog Aging Project, and we are so happy to welcome all of you to our first ever community appreciation event. So just a little bit about me. The most important thing is that I have a dog who looks like a Muppet, and her name is Gilda. She's PAC member number 28,260. And she's taking a nap on the floor while we talk today. Most of the time when you get emails about surveys or newsletters about the progress that we're making at the Dog Aging Project, those are coming from me and the communications team. I work really closely with Harmony, who's joining me here today, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Like Amber said, my name is Harmony. I am also a member of the communications team. My title is Study Participant Manager. So very often, whenever you communicate with us via email, I am the one who's responding to you, one of a handful, but I take care of a lot of your email communications and love hearing from you. I also have a dog that is a PAC member. His name is Oh Boy, and he's a beautiful German Shepherd, number 297.
So Harmony and I will be your MCs today. We're so excited to be hosting this event. Just a reminder for those of you who might be watching a recording of this video later, to become a member of the Dog Aging Project PAC, first you nominate your dog at dogagingproject.org. Then you'll set up a personal research portal that'll allow you to complete the health and life experience survey. And after that, you are a member of the Dog Aging Project PAC. And then you have the opportunity to both participate in this community that we have online and in our ongoing research activities. So for the PAC members who are joining us live, thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to be with us. You know, we wouldn't be here without you. We are just about to enroll our 29,000th dog, and we couldn't do it without your dedication and your passion, your patience, and your support. And we are so grateful you make this project possible. And today's for you.
Today's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be together for an hour, and over that hour, you're going to hear from our Dog Aging Project Principal Investigator. You're going to learn about our new publicly available data dashboard, very exciting. You're going to also be among a very select few to view a very special short film that means a whole lot to our team, and we think you're going to really enjoy that. We're going to have an informative Q&A session towards the end of our hour together, and then to wrap it all up, we're going to do some giveaways of our new swag that we have, and we'll let you know later how to sign up for that.
So for those of you watching on YouTube Live, you can ask questions on the live chat under this video, or if you go onto the dog park, you can click the red PAC Appreciation Event banner. That'll take you to the thread where you can also put in questions or comments, and anyone who puts a question or a comment in that thread on the dog park will be entered for our giveaway. If when we do the Q&A later, if we don't get to all your questions, we'll follow up with answers to those on the dog park.
All right, well, without further ado, I'm very happy to introduce our principal investigator of the Dog Aging Project, Dr. Daniel Promislow. Dr. Promislow is the proud, he's very proud to have PAC member number 27, who is Frisbee, his beloved senior canine companion. Daniel is currently a professor of pathology and biology at the University of Washington. He will provide you all with a project overview, and we'll discuss what's on the horizon for the world's largest canine observational study. And just a very interesting side note, as an undergrad, Daniel's essay to get into graduate school was about his desire and hope to bridge the gap between scientists and the general public. That was back in 1985. It took him 35 years, but he feels he's finally getting close to his goal. And that's thanks to you, the participants of the Dog Aging Project. Daniel?
Thank you, Harmony. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen here. And I just want to let you know how excited I am to have you all here today. As you'll hear, this has been more than a decade in the making, and the the goal was that someday we would all be here together doing this. And so it's very exciting to be kicking this off with you. And um, in that vein, my talk today is really about how the Dog Aging Project is about making connections. And I'm going to talk about making connections in four different ways. The Dog Aging Project is an aging project. And so first, I want to tell you a little bit about aging, which has been a connector for me for my whole career. I started working on aging as a graduate student back in the late 80s. The first scientific paper I published on aging was in 1991 about senescence or aging. We use them interchangeably in natural populations of mammals. And then a few years later, I started working on fruit flies. You can see some fruit flies on the right side of your screen. I still have a lab where students work on fruit flies. They turn out to be a really wonderful model to study not just aging, but all kinds of things. We've learned a huge amount, even about human biology, from these little critters. I've stuck with aging for lots of reasons. One is that it's the single most important risk factor for many different diseases. If you think of the kinds of diseases that are very common in modern human populations, you see some of them here: arthritis, cancer, cardiovascular disease. For all of these, the single greatest risk factor is not smoking or diet or lack of exercise. Those are important. It's aging. And one of the things that's really motivated the aging research community for the last 30 years or so is the hope that by targeting aging, we can delay the onset and decrease the effects of all these different diseases. That's the goal anyway. There are other ways for me that aging is a very exciting problem to work on. It connects all of these important diseases, but it also connects other things. So first of all, it connects space in the sense that there are colleagues of mine who study aging at the level of small molecules. Over on the left side of the screen, you can see these molecules that are 1 billionth of a meter. That 10 to the minus 9 is a billionth of a meter, all the way up to people studying aging in whales that are almost 100 meters. So this huge variation in spatial scale that we can study aging, that brings aging researchers together. Similarly, there's this huge variation in time that aging bridges. And I'm just showing you two of the many, many species that people have studied aging in. On the left is a mayfly. The juvenile stage of mayflies lives in the water as larvae for a long time. The adults emerge, and within 1 to 2 days, they die. And as those days go by, those brief 1 to 2 days, they actually show signs of aging. Initially, they're quite strong and they fall apart as they grow old really rapidly. And at the other end of the scale, the longest living animal that we know of is the ocean quahog. And many of you will be familiar with this as the clam that goes into your Boston clam chowder or your Manhattan clam chowder. Um, these species have been found in the wild to live over 500 years. So aging connects diseases, it connects space and time. And for us in the Dog Aging Project, it connects ideas. The idea of studying diseases. On the top left, you can see cancer, arthritis, heart failure. It connects biological approaches. In the bottom left, you see, for example, systems biology. That's the study of using modern molecular tools to look at all the different molecules in an organism. Or on the top right, you can see behavior, looking at the human, non-human animal bond. How does that change as we age? How does that change as our dogs age? The ethics around end-of-life care. Aging just connects all these different ideas, and aging in dogs, studying aging in dogs. And in the Dog Aging Project, what we hope will eventually be more than 100,000 pack members. As Amber mentioned, we're getting close to 29,000. So we're well on our way to creating this pack that is going to teach us so much about so many things connected by aging. So that's the first of the 4 stories that I want to tell you about. The next really important set of connections you've already seen firsthand, and that is our team. You've met Amber and Eric and Harmony. There are so many people. And I want to tell you a little bit about how this all started. So the Dog Aging Project was inspired by a paper that came out in a journal, Science. This is the premier science journal in the United States. It's read by people all around the world, comes out every week. And back in 2007, a paper was published from Elaine Ostrander's group. Dr. Ostrander is one of the most famous dog geneticists in the world. And her group published a paper. A picture about it showed up on the cover of Science. That's what you're looking at here, this Great Dane and Chihuahua walking side by side. The paper was about size in dogs. And it found a single gene called IGF-1, that stands for insulin growth factor 1, that plays a major role in dog size. It turns out that all of these very small size or toy breeds, Chihuahuas and toy poodles and Dachshunds, have a form of the IGF-1 gene that's new in the sense that it isn't found in wolves, which is the ancestor of all modern dogs. Whereas the large breed dogs like Irish Wolfhounds and Great Danes have a different form of this gene that is the one that came from wolves. It's the ancestral form. So I saw this paper and I got very excited because not only do I love dogs, but also IGF-1 is also associated with aging in the aging research literature. And the thing that's interesting about dogs, among many other things, is that large breed dogs, as many of you sadly are aware, are much shorter lived than small breed dogs. And I wondered if this size gene might also in dogs be the aging gene. We still don't know the answer. And I know some of you are asking, why is it that large breed dogs are shorter lived? The Dog Aging Project is going to answer that question. We still don't know. But this paper got me excited about working on dogs. I knew nothing about aging in dogs. I knew a lot about aging, but nothing about dogs. And so at the time, I was a professor at the University of Georgia, where there is a veterinary school across the street from the department I was in. So I reached out to the veterinary school, and eventually I was introduced to Dr. Kate Creevy, who sent me an email in early December 2007. And she said, "Hi, I understand you're trying to look at longevity in dogs. I'm not sure I can help, but I'm happy to hear more about it." Dr. Creevy is a very humble veterinarian and scientist. She ended up helping a lot. If it weren't for her, the Dog Aging Project wouldn't exist. This meeting was really the launching point for the Dog Aging Project back in 2007. Dr. Creevy is now at Texas A&M, and she is the Chief Veterinary Officer for the Dog Aging Project. In 2013, I made another really important connection. I moved to the University of Washington, and I began speaking with Dr. Matt Kaberlein, a colleague in my department, and he got very excited about doing aging research in dogs as well. He's a very well-known aging researcher, and the three of us together began to outline the proposal that would become the National Institute of Health grant that funds everything that we're able to do with you, the dog owners. Of course, we created an outline, but we needed a lot of people to help. And this is the most important connection for us researchers is this incredible team of people that we have who contribute their brilliance, their energy, their time, their creativity to make the Dog Aging Project possible. And you've already met some of them. And I also want to point out that the Dog Aging Project is not just about the people running it, but also connecting to the scientific world outside. So we're an open data project, after removing any data that we need to protect your privacy, we will share all the data about your dogs with scientists around the world. So this is an open data project. Other researchers can look at the data. We will have so much data. We already have so much data from the surveys that you're filling out that we alone can't mine the data and make all the discoveries. We're an open collaboration project. We will invite other scientists to create other proposals for other research projects built on top of the foundation that we are laying with the Dog Aging Project. And we're an open education project. We're excited in the future to use these data to create modules that are appropriate for a 3rd grade class, or maybe a 12th grade biology lab, or for a community college lab, where we can allow allow students to do original science with our data and learn in the process about biology or statistics or any of the kinds of things that our data will allow them to learn about. So the third connection that I've already alluded to, that's a very important connection for us, is really what the Dog Aging Project is all about from a scientific perspective. Patterns of aging vary enormously, as all of you know from your friends and loved ones. Some of them seem to age in a really amazing, healthy way, and for others, they've experienced great challenges as they age. All of that variation is ultimately explained by 2 things: by biology and by environment, and by the connection between those. So the goal of the Dog Aging Project is to understand how variation in biology and variation in the environment affect variation in aging in dogs. And I am experiencing this right now. This is pack number 27, Frisbee. And on top, you can see her in her more vigorous days. She's now 15 years old, and she's struggling with all kinds of things that are happening as she ages. She has an amazing attitude, and I learn a lot from her about how to age well, but certainly there are challenges that she's facing. So just to show you a little bit more detail, on top, you can see the kind of things that we're looking at in the biology. So a lot of the biology we learn from the questions that you share with us in the health and life experience survey that you filled out about things like behavior or the diseases they've experienced. We can measure things like gut microbes and the genome sequence, clinical chemistry. Those are the molecules that we measure when you bring your dog in and give a blood sample or a urine sample, inflammation markers, and so on. So much we can learn about the biology of the dogs. The environment too. Much of the information about the environment we learn from your surveys. We also know from your zip code, for example, things like air quality and water quality and the green space around you. How far is the nearest park? Is there a dog park nearby? And how do these 2 things connect with each other to influence the aging that we measure, the lifespan, the mobility and frailty that you will tell us about, as well as the behavior and cognition that you will be sharing with us about your dog and age-related disease, all those sorts of things. So an important question that we really have to ask is, well, why dogs? As I already told you, one of the important patterns of variation that we see in dogs is that large breed dogs are much shorter lived than small breed dogs. So there's huge variation in lifespan and in the diseases that they get. And importantly, the healthcare system in dogs is second only in sophistication to our own. There's environmental variation. It might be hard for you to see, but the top picture shows a dog that's hiking. The bottom picture shows a dog that's smoking. I don't recommend or condone this, but there's certainly variation in how healthy the environment is that a dog is exposed to. And finally, a big motivator for us is that people love dogs. And that's what brings all of you here together. And that leads me to the last and really most important set of connections really, that is the Dog Aging Project, and that is you. What brings us all together is that we all love dogs. It doesn't matter what kind of dog is in our life or dogs. Some of you have many, many dogs. It doesn't matter where we're from, or what our favorite sports team is, or what kind of music we listen to. Doesn't matter. What brings us all together is this shared love of dogs and the incredible passion and generosity and energy that all of you are showing in sharing your data with us. As you're going to hear today, we are already writing scientific papers based on the data that you are sharing with us. And that's a tremendously important connection. That is the connection between all of us on the dog park that really is going to make the Dog Aging Project a forever project. And for that, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Fun fact for everybody out there, long, long ago, I was a graduate student in Daniel's lab at the University of Georgia. So I know all about those fruit flies. So next, I'm really excited to introduce you to Dr. Matt Dunbar. Hi, Matt. So Matt is a scientist at the University of Washington in Seattle, and he heads up the Dog Aging Project's Data and Analysis Core. His team is responsible for building and maintaining the research portal that you all use and the surveys that you answer for us. His group also compiles all the data that is generated by those surveys and provides that in a format to help the researchers at the project do the science they're trying to do. Matt's a geographer, but he doesn't just make maps. His career has focused on making complex research studies possible, which is obviously why he's leading our data and analysis core for this incredibly complicated project. So he's worked on projects like mapping landmine fields in Chile and studying HIV transmission patterns in Kenya. He is very passionate about solving problems and making science possible. On the personal side, you should know that Matt married a cat person. We don't hold that against him, but he and his daughter undertook a great lobbying effort and convinced his wife that they needed to get a dog, which they successfully did right before Matt joined the Dog Aging Project. So good on you there, Matt. And with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Amber. I appreciate it. So in my role in the Dog Aging Project, and it's kind of a data nerd in general, I'm super excited to share with you all today the first kind of big batch of data that we've got to release on the Dog Aging Project. As Daniel mentioned, collecting all this data has been a long time in the making for him and his colleagues. And for those of us participating in building the system and you all participating in giving us data on the project, it's been a year in the making, this data set. What we're going to look at today was made possible because of all the study participants, the DATPAC members, who've been generous enough to share with us their stories, their dogs' data, filling out surveys over the last year. And now we're really excited to share that data back with you all today. So what we're going to be looking at today is a glimpse into how Dog Aging Project science actually begins. The dashboard that I'm going to be showing you today is actually used daily by all of our study personnel to conduct this study. And our scientists use this same dashboard to start their process of understanding aging. So scientists look at the summaries, the same summaries we're going to be looking at today and that you'll have access to start the process of choosing which research questions to ask and formulating questions or hypotheses about what might be going on amongst DATPAC members and perhaps dogs in general. So as Daniel mentioned, one of our key core values on the Dog Aging Project is open data and science. We want to give back to you all and to the scientific community as much as possible the data that you've been generous enough to give to us, and as well the science that gets generated from that. So be on the lookout. We'll communicate to you early and often all of the discoveries that we're making via our newsletter, blog posts, and journal articles. But another major core value of the Dog Aging Project is training the next generation of scientists with the hope that eventually they'll take the lead. And just like parents hope their kids do more than they do, we hope that our students will actually accomplish more than we ourselves are doing. So one of my favorite students that I've had the pleasure to work with on the project over the last year, Yunbi Nam, is actually responsible and has built the dashboard we're going to be looking at today almost  So I wanted to say a big thank you to Yunbi before we get started. Okay, so first I'm going to do a demo, show you all the dashboards so you can kind of get a look and feel for how it works and some instructions on how to run it yourselves. And then at the end of the talk, I'll give you instructions on how to access that yourself. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and meet the DAT pack by the numbers. All right, so welcome to the DAT pack Health and Life Experiences Survey Dashboard. So what we're looking at here today, and what you'll have access to after the talk today, is the survey results from all DAT pack members through December 31st, 2020. So the 2020 data set contains 27,542 study participants. It's a huge number. As Daniel said, we're over exceeding every wildest dream that we had about participation in the project, and that's all thanks to all of our DAT pack members. So the landing page here of the Dog Aging Project dashboard tells you a little bit about the project. It explains a little bit about the Health and Life Experiences survey, which DAT pack members fill out in order to become a member of the Dog Aging Project pack. Those of you that have filled that survey out know that it contains 10 individual instruments, owner contact through additional studies. For those who haven't filled it out, or those that have, we provide on the dashboard the ability to look at the individual survey instruments. We've got PDF copies of those instruments, so you know the types of questions that we ask. And the dashboard also provides a little bit of background for those of you that might be interested in how it was produced and how we'll end up eventually sharing the data. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in and look at our first survey instrument on the dashboard, and that's the owner contact page. So the owner contact survey instrument asks information about the household that the dog lives in, people, number of households, and if those households are owned or rented. How the dashboard works is our first column of information on every page presents all of those variables or questions that were asked to every study participant. So in this case, the number of people in the household was a question that was asked, and the response options were 1 through 11 or greater than 12 people in the household. The dashboard shows in the second part of the table the number of subjects out of our 27,000 that responded to any given question with that response, and then the proportion or percentage of all of our respondents that makes up. So in the case of number of people in the household, we can clearly see that a good number of our participants, 55%, over half, live in a 2-person household. Going down through the first column, we also break that down into number of adults, children, whether you own, rent, or other living situation. And then finally, we asked all the DAT pack participants if they had a secondary address. 2,698, or 10% of our participants, said they did. Their dog and them lived in a second address throughout the year. The second column on the dashboard then shows, of those participants who said they had a secondary address, information about that secondary address. The dashboard keeps this same process of communicating information of subsets of populations in the second and third columns throughout. Okay, enough about people. Let's look at the dogs. So the dog demographics information was our first way to gather data about who the dogs are that make up the dog pack. On this page, you can find out stats about pure breed versus mixed breed. Here you can see we have an almost 50-50 split, which is great for science, between pure and mixed breed. We can see the age category, sex, spay, neuter status, weight, etc. about all of our dogs in the first column. In the second column, specific information about dogs based on sex and reproductive status. And then a new feature in the dashboard as of just yesterday, we've actually got a subset of the dogs who are pure breed, their breed listing. This can give you an indication if you're one of the more popular breeds in the study or one of the individuals who may stand out as the only one of their kind in the study. Yoonbi, who produced this dashboard, just let me know yesterday that she's hoping to release a feature that would also indicate for the mixed breed dogs which breeds were chosen as well. So be on the lookout for that. All of the other instruments in the health and life experience are shown on the left-hand side of the dashboard. Physical activity providing information about what the dogs are doing with their owners. And our scientists are already starting to ask questions with this data. Daniel Promisov is working on some initial research looking at activity and lifestyle, level of activity compared to where our dogs live, or urban, rural, suburban dogs may or may not be more or less active. So ongoing research has already gotten started using these data. I'm going to skip ahead to one other dashboard before I wrap up, and that's health status. This is a really interesting one. This is one of our biggest indicators in the project, giving us some idea of the aging process and health outcomes of all of our study participants' dogs. On this tab, I'll point out general characteristics in the first tab, indicating at the bottom which dogs have actually been diagnosed with certain disorders, whether they be congenital or those disorders diagnosed later in life. And for all those diagnoses, the general categories are broken down into specific diagnoses. And this is going to provide us with a wealth of information to help study aging along with you throughout the project. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And wrap up really quickly by letting you know how to access this dashboard and data. So any one of you can now go to data.dogagingproject.org, and that will allow you to access the dashboard that we looked at today, exploring the stats of all the DATPAC members that have filled out the Health and Life Experience Survey. So along with the data we've collected today, I also hope that in looking at the dashboard, you realize the power of surveys, which is going to be one of our biggest indicators of how healthy aging occurs in dogs. And the power of surveys that can be collected over time will only help to amplify that. So we appreciate you sharing all of the data you have so far, DATPAC members, and we look forward to seeing you back again, hopefully all 27,000 plus of you, to fill out annual follow-up surveys, which will give us an even better glimpse on what aging looks like in our canine companions. Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. So as scientists, we tend to get super geeky about the data, but we also really love to tell a good story too. And so today we're really thrilled to be able to premiere a brand new short film about the Dog Aging Project. So sit back, enjoy this story.
At the Dog Aging Project, we dream big and we think big. We want to understand the lives of dogs across the country. Are they snuggle buddies or working dogs, beloved rescues or pedigree show dogs? Do they run their hearts out or keep a steady pace on walks around town? Every dog is unique, and we want to get to know yours. The Dog Aging Project is the most ambitious canine health study in the world. Our team of scientists and veterinarians is partnering with tens of thousands of dogs and their humans across the United States. We're gathering information about the health and life experiences of all kinds of dogs, young and old, mixed breed and purebred, those who are healthy and those with chronic illnesses. What do they eat? Where do they play? Are they members of a pack or king of the castle? We are interested in dogs from all walks of life. As we begin to understand how biology, lifestyle, and environment affect health and longevity in dogs, we can use this information to help our canine companions live the best lives possible. We want to maximize what we call health span, the period of life spent in good health and free from chronic disease. And that's not all. What we learn about dog health and longevity will make a profound contribution to our understanding of human health. Like us, many dogs experience physical and cognitive declines. They are susceptible to the same diseases that we are, like cancer, diabetes, and arthritis. Dogs share our environment, and like humans, they have access to a sophisticated healthcare system. By studying the aging process in dogs, we can discover better ways to predict, diagnose, treat, and prevent these illnesses. Our participants truly are citizen scientists, collecting data for our research project through surveys about their dog's health and life experiences. We provide tools and support so the dog owners can take body measurements, submit canine DNA samples, or record their dogs doing everyday activities. These dogs continue to live and play at home with their families, while our team uses this information to unlock the secrets of healthy aging. But the Dog Aging Project isn't just a research study, we're a community. Members of our project are building lifelong relationships with fellow dog lovers and sharing all the milestones they reach along the way. Dogs have a lot to teach us, not just about health, but about compassion, responsibility, and unconditional love. We never have quite enough time with our dogs, and when they're gone, we're never quite the same. What if we could help our best friends live longer, healthier lives? That's what the Dog Aging Project is all about. Will you join us?
Personally, I never get tired of watching that. I especially love the part where the dogs are swimming in the ocean. I'm really excited that you've been our first audience to see our film. We will be posting this on all of our social media channels, Facebook, here on YouTube, Instagram. And if you'd like to share it with your own networks, please do. We'd love that. We always could use your help spreading the word about the Dog Aging Project. As I think you can see from both Daniel and Matt's presentations, the power of this project to answer these really important questions comes from all of you, and having tens of thousands of people helping us to gather these data that we need to answer these big questions. You probably also know we're starting to enroll some of our dog pack members into smaller additional studies. And for those studies, we're really trying to balance out some very specific scientific needs, right? So a balance between intact dogs and dogs who've been spayed or neutered, a lot of range of size and age and geographic location, genetic background. And so you will see that we're going to be putting out some calls to encourage new people to join the Dog Aging Project. In part, that's because we're really looking to recruit more intact dogs, some more puppies, and more dogs from certain regions. So you will see some of that messaging coming from us in the next few months. And if you feel inclined to share any of those calls for participation, we would really love that. Thank you. Okay, so now I want to bring Daniel and Harmony and Matt back in so we can answer a few of your questions. Just a reminder, you can ask questions on the YouTube live feed or in the dog park on the dedicated forum. Click on that red pack appreciation banner and you'll get to the question forum. And if we don't get to all of your questions today, and I know we won't because there are a lot of them, we will be following up with a dedicated thread on the dog park to answer all of your questions. And in particular, some of them are veterinary in nature. So we'll bring on some of our research veterinarians to answer those questions. Okay, so to get started, there's interest, Daniel, in this big picture question about longevity and size. And you've already told us you don't know the answer yet, but people would be interested in knowing either some of your hypotheses for what might be going on or how you hope to attack that question and get to the answer.
So the first thing I already told you about was a hint from that paper from 2007 about insulin growth factor 1. So we will certainly be collecting information. We'll be sequencing the genomes of many thousands of dogs, and we'll also be collecting information about their size and how long they live. And we all hope that it's a very long time for each of your dogs, of course. Putting those three things together, the sequence of that gene and the size and the lifespan, we can begin to tease apart if it's true that that gene is causing variation in both size and in lifespan? And if so, that's a big clue. There are some other ideas as well. For example, we see a lot of differences in the causes of disease of dogs of different size. There are certain kinds of cancer, for example, that are very common in large breed dogs and almost never seen in small breed dogs. And if those cancers happen to occur relatively early in life, that could explain some of the variation that we see as well. And that might be true of other diseases. Not just cancer, but other types of diseases as well. Until now, we haven't had as comprehensive a data set. And we don't yet, but in the coming 5 to 10 years, we will have, thanks to you, the most comprehensive data set that anyone has ever had that will allow us in quite some detail to understand why it is that those sweet big dogs just don't live as long as the sweet little ones.
There was a question before your presentation, Matt, about will we be able to know what kind of breeds are in the dog aging project? So I think everybody was really excited to see that addition to the data dashboard. I think there's some curiosity around the distribution of genetic variation in our dog aging project pack. We see there are a lot of laboratory retrievers in the purebreds, and in the mixed breed dogs, many of them are also predominantly some lab mix, right? So what I'm thinking about all of those dogs that you showed us that were maybe we only have one representative of a breed. Can one or Daniel or Matt or both of you talk about how important it is to study a broad range of genetic diversity and why we might want to see some more of those really rare breed dogs join the pack?
Sure, I'll just answer the question about the data because I love that, and then I'll hand it over to Daniel for the scientific explanation. Yeah, we were really excited to get the breed listing on there for today, and I just saw UNB is so active in developing this app. Come back and check often. She's already got the mixed breed stats developed, and we'll roll that into the app so people can see that tomorrow. But to answer your question, I'll hand it over to Daniel so he can explain why those singletons or those large groups are all important to the project.
That's such a good question. It's central to what we're asking. So remember that I told you how the Dog Aging Project is an attempt to understand how biology and environment shape healthy aging. So that biology includes genetics. So we could also ask, how does genetics and environment shape healthy aging? If you think about human height, for example, our height is determined by genes and environment. Those are the two things. So to really understand how genetic variation shapes aging variation, the more variation we have, the better. If we only had Labrador retrievers, we wouldn't learn very much because they're genetically pretty close to each other. There's still a lot of variation within Labrador retrievers, but the more genetic variation we have, the greater our ability to ask about how genes shape aging. That said, with these big cohorts of dogs that are very common and well loved, like Labrador retrievers, like German shepherds, there's not as much variation there, but they give us a lot of power to ask about environmental variation in a situation where there's not too much genetic variation. And so we can really focus on subtle differences in diet or exercise, for example. So as Matt said, both of those are really important. We love that we have a huge number of some breeds, and we love that we have lots and lots of very rare breeds that give us that big range.
That's a nice segue into this next question. Well, there are a series of questions about whether or not the discoveries made by the Dog Aging Project will lead to specific recommendations about diet or activity regimes, or whether your dog should smoke or not.
So let me give you one example from the basic aging research literature. What people have discovered for many years of research, going back almost a century, is that when you in the laboratory, if you reduce the amount of dietary intake in a mouse or a fruit fly, like what I work on, the organisms tend to live longer. More recently, what people have discovered is that what they call intermittent fasting is beneficial in the lab. So that doesn't mean reducing the amount of food that a mouse eats, but reducing how often they eat. So if you only allow them to eat during a 12-hour period out of 24 hours, they tend to live longer than if you allow them to eat anytime they want. So one of the really interesting things that we're already seeing in our survey data, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, is that there are some dogs that are given food, all of their food in the morning, and so they just eat once a day. And then they effectively fast for 24 hours. And other dogs that tend to eat throughout the day. One of the really interesting questions will be, how does the frequency of feeding in dogs impact health? As we learn about that, we will write papers about that. And this will be really helpful information for veterinarians who, knowing your dog the best, will be able to say, well, interestingly, what scientists are finding is that in dogs of this size or of this age, this frequency of feeding seems to be associated with best health. So that's just one example of how our results, which we're going to need to be patient. We're talking about a 5 to 10 year period because of the data coming in year after year from you. Those data will eventually be communicated to the veterinary community, and your veterinarian will be able to help you make even better choices than he or she already does with your own dog.
Thank you, Daniel. That leads to a question that maybe Harmony could address, which is, how do I continue to support my aging dog as he goes through the many changes of getting older? So this is an area you're really passionate about, Harmony.
Yes, thanks, Amber. I do have a passion for senior pets as well as all the rest, but I try to be an advocate for my own senior animals. And there are, certain ways that we can do that. One is having a close relationship with your dog's veterinarian. As dogs age, their medical needs might change. So staying current on the recommended exams, the frequency of exams that your veterinarian might recommend for your dog is important. They might recommend blood work samples on a certain schedule to monitor internal organ function. Often having more information about what's going on with parts of your dog that you can't see can lead to earlier discovery of certain issues, certain health issues, thus a better opportunity to help the dog recover or maintain or be healthier through those particular medical concerns. We definitely see aging dogs, pardon me, we can see them slowing down a bit. That can be due to arthritis. So we always recommend our senior dogs be, able to lay on a soft surface and adjust food intake as necessary. Some of our senior dogs just don't use the amount of calories that they did when they were younger. And so that can lead to obesity if they're not using all of the calories that we're offering. So adjusting their food, of course, by your veterinarian's recommendation, then just offering love and keeping your eyes on them and monitoring any changes. And again, we encourage those relationships with your local veterinarian, and yeah, that probably covers it. Thank you.
I want to give a shout out to our blog. We have a senior dog care series that we've already posted, I think 2 or maybe 3 parts of that series, and we have several more to come. Those are written by members of our veterinary team, and they're full of a lot of good advice for how we take care of our senior dogs. because I do think I want to just reiterate what Daniel was saying about the time it will take for us to make discoveries that will really make a difference in dogs' lives. We're all impatient for that, but we all at the Dog Aging Project really sort of take a long view that this work is benefiting future generations of dogs, and that's sort of the goal we have in mind. I was curious if you would like to talk a little bit more about the cognitive assessments and how important those are to do year after year, and why that matters.
Some of you have seen, in addition to the Health and Life Experience Survey, we've created other surveys as well. And one of the things that we're especially interested in is cognitive function. And there are some aspects of dog behavior, for example, that we think are fairly constant with age. So, for example, there are some dogs that are incredibly friendly to people and want to sniff and lick every person that they ever meet, and others that are more shy and tend not to be so interested in sniffing and licking every person they meet. And that tends to be a behavior that's relatively fixed with age. But just like in people, in dogs, some of the cognitive function, things that we also experience, like memory ability and our sensory ability, hearing and sight, these sorts of things can decline with age in dogs, just like they do in people. And we will be providing surveys to you to ask specifically about that cognitive function. We're really interested in how that's affected by age, and it can really have a dramatic effect on the quality of life of dogs. Some of you may have experienced a dog, some of you may have a dog or have had a dog that had what we call canine cognitive dysfunction, which looks a little bit like Alzheimer's disease in people, where they may not recognize their loved ones, or they may get lost in their own home and not know how to get themselves out of a corner. We want to know not only when that happens and what kinds of breeds it happens in, but can we collect enough information to also understand how to prevent or delay the onset of those kinds of cognitive challenges?
We've started to talk a lot, both here and in many of the newsletters we're sending out, about additional studies that we're enrolling dogs in. And there's some folks are wondering what's their role in participation in activities if they haven't been able to upload electronic medical records, which is an eligibility requirement for some of the current studies. So do they still get to do fun things?
So that the biggest part of the Dog Aging Project, and that, as I mentioned, is already there are already people analyzing data. I could show you the data that I've been working on showing how activity levels change with age, which is a really important and basic question for which we've never had these kind of data. That all comes from the Health and Life Experience Survey. And so that level of participation is the fundamental foundation on which everything else rests. In human medicine, as all of you know, there are many specialties, from pediatrics that you all started out with as children to cardiology and orthopedics and ophthalmology and all these specialties. We have the same specialties in veterinary science. One of the specialties in human medicine that doesn't exist in canine medicine is geriatrics, the study of old age and how that impacts health. The most important part of the Dog Aging Project data set is what we're learning from the HLES. So we can't overestimate the value of that. There are other smaller cohorts. They're limited in part simply by the amount of funding that we have from the National Institutes of Health to do things like collect genome sequences. So we have enough funding to collect 10,000 genome sequences. That's huge, and it's going to allow us to do all kinds of work. It's not enough funding to sequence the genome of every dog in America. There are almost 100 million dogs in the US. So it's necessarily limited, and we need, and some of the questions that we're asking where we collect more complicated samples like DNA require that we also match that with information from electronic medical records. Even if you don't have the ability to upload electronic medical records, there will be lots of other fun things down the road. So for example, we have a wonderful colleague at the University of Arizona who's been developing some very innovative ways to measure cognitive function in your beloved dog with these fun games that you can play at home with simple materials that you would have in your house. And these sorts of things we will eventually roll out to everybody. So there are lots of fun things that you will be able to do, even if you're not part of some of the groups that involve individuals that have uploaded electronic medical records. And we're going to come back to you year after year to collect these survey data, as Matt Dunbar mentioned. And that is just so important. And we'll be coming back to you with new surveys and new things that you can do, new ways to understand your dog as he or she ages.
Thank you. So I want to be respectful of time. Thank you, Dr. Promislo and Dr. Dunbar, for coming to talk to us and answer all our questions. I'm going to have Harmony come back on. We're going to tell our viewers just a little bit about the giveaway and what comes next. And then we'll go on to enjoy the rest of our Saturdays.
Yep. Thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate that you've been here with us on this Saturday and that we've gotten to meet you in a bit of a more personal way. We really love that we've had this opportunity, and we're very appreciative of you. Recently, we got in an order of new stickers, and we're very proud of those. So we're really wanting to give those away to some of the participants of today's event. Eric Lent. He is a team member here, and his title is a community outreach coordinator, but Eric is just, so much more than that. He is what we call the dog father of the dog park. He has spent countless hours, heading off the creation of the dog park, and we all spend time there, enjoying it, enjoying hearing from you, learning more about your companions. And a lot of you that have spent time in the forum have probably heard from Eric. He's there a lot and answering your questions. So we want to send a big thank you to him for all of the time and effort that he's put into creating that forum for us. At the end of the event, Eric will discover who the winners of the prizes are. He will email you and confirm your address to get those sent out to you. And so looking ahead, we want to let you know that we're going to have another live event coming up soon. And the next founder that we're going to hear from, his name is Dr. Matt Caberline, another founder of the Dog Aging Project. And he's going to join us to discuss the science of aging. So please stay tuned for more details about that event coming up on the dog park. That information should be coming in our next newsletter. And again, a big thank you to everyone who participated with us on this Saturday.
I want to remind everyone that if you'd like to share the short film about the Dog Aging Project, please do. We would love to have you help us spread the word. Your participation in this project is what makes it possible. We're so grateful. Thank you for being part of the Dog Aging Project family. We'll see you at our next event.